Friday, everybody, and welcome into the Graham Link and Mac Lane podcast, presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Graham Link and Mac Lane. It is a football Friday. It is week 11. Mac, it feels like the season is not really close to being over, and it's already week 11, I guess, because of all the bye weeks and all the stuff. We're going to have 15 weeks of football, 14 weeks? I'm not sure. But
yeah,
the saying week 11 sounds weird to me.
It does. I don't love it. It seems like we're very close.
Yeah.
But then I also think that the national championship will be played on January 20th.
Yeah.
So we've got some time. We've got some time to really get it going and to talk about this. But the season is just dwindling away. It's super sad. I don't like it. I think we should slow down. I don't know how, but let's try to figure that out, people, because this is an impactful weekend. It's not necessarily the biggest or the baddest, but there's some really impactful things that are shaping bowl eligibility, that are shaping the race for the top for Charlotte, which seems really solidified, and also just the 12-team playoff preference and layout, which, by the way, we recorded our episode before. I have some thoughts on that, KG, if we want to get into it or if we just want to wait. I was just despise. I couldn't even breathe when I saw Boise State was ahead of SMU. That to me is such like a crappy precedence and so annoying, because you're literally saying that a G team that plays significantly lower competition, like not even close, every single weekend, that lost to the number one team in the country, which, by the way, when they played them, Oregon was not Oregon. Oregon looked terrible, and they won, is more than or better than a power team that is undefeated in their conference, that has a loss to a top 10 team, which, by the way, when they lost that game, Kevin Jennings was not the starting quarterback.
Right.
So
SMU
they are
wasn't
significantly
SMU yet.
different teams. It's such a joke. I really like the more dumb stuff that happens with this committee, and like last year was a huge tipping point. It's just like, let's just take people out of it. They're too easy to manipulate. They have too many things of like outstanding biases. The fact that we have a 2-loss, miserable-looking Alabama team. This is not a Nick Saban Alabama team. This is not an Alabama team that was dynastic. We have them at 11 after getting whooped by Vanderbilt. And but they blew out Missouri, who we have ranked. A joke that Missouri's ranked. So there's a lot of different things that I'm like sick about. I'm sick about it. The fact that Texas A&M, all right, I'm going to get off this because I'm going to get real emotional.
No, do it.
The fact that Texas A&M got embarrassed by an unranked 3-loss South Carolina team and fell essentially, I know this is the first poll, but let's be honest, they basically said, oh, what'd the AP poll do? Okay, we'll do that too. They dropped them 4 spots, and yet Clemson loses to a ranked team and like almost fell out of the poll.
Yeah.
Unreal. Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
But hey, what do I know about football?
Exactly, Mac. I mean, there's so many thoughts. We all know where the biases are. We all know the bias, that the SEC is going to get the benefit. Like we're no longer hiding it, right? It's just so obvious. So I think we have to take it with a grain of salt.
Right.
When it comes to Boise and SMU, I just looked this up really quickly. Strength of schedule, Boise 59, SMU 72. I feel like that will probably change as the season progresses.
And based on what? Based on what? You're telling me that those teams that they play, SMU wouldn't sleepwalk by 50 points every game? Like that's because they played Oregon.
It's the Oregon factor.
Great. It's so
I think
dumb,
it's the Oregon factor.
You lost.
And,
like, okay, great. The one test you played, you got obliterated.
SMU, as we all said before the season started, they're not playing the hardest ACC schedule. So I don't know if that's a huge indictment of the ACC. I think it's just the teams they got. Strength of record, Boise State 16, SMU 13. So there's also that metric. And I like your point, Mac, about, well, Oregon wasn't looking like the number one team in the country when Boise honestly almost beat them. SMU was nowhere near what they look like now when they played BYU, and they had a legitimate reason. They were figuring out who their quarterback was. Right. So, and BYU is still a good loss, even despite all that. It's crazy.
And let me just triple down on this, because now I am emotional about it, since we're getting into all the leagues. The fact that BYU and Indiana are no losses, undefeated, power teams and they're behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams with one loss
Yeah.
is just stupid. It's just dumb. It just makes no sense. Like the inconsistencies in which this committee already is rating people is dumb.
Hmm.
It's so stupid. And the fact that they're like, oh, well, we value this quality loss. It's a loss. You lost. Like if you're undefeated and you lost, there's a difference. There's a difference. You don't get credit for good losing. Like you're a loser. You lost that. You're out. And so it's just it drives me actually crazy, KG. It really does. But hey,
Have
this
we
is the first
all?
rating. None of it matters. None of it matters.
Yeah. Have we all collectively, just as a society, decided that Notre Dame did not lose to Northern Illinois?
Right.
Like, I have a legitimate question.
Who just
Have
got
we
word, by
all
the way?
just decided it didn't happen? Because I truly feel like it's being ignored. And I
It's so
don't
dumb.
think they would ignore that for some other teams. And it's not like they lost
Yeah.
one game to A&M or one game to whom they
Right.
lost in Northern Illinois. And we just act
Crazy.
like it didn't happen. All right.
It was at home too, right? It was at
It was
home.
at
Is that right?
home. It was definitely at home.
Come on, guys.
For reference,
Come on.
5 ACC teams in the initial rankings: Clemson 23, Louisville 22, Pitt 18, SMU 13, Miami 4. And we will get into basically all of those teams. SMU does have a bye, and Louisville, right? Louisville has a bye. But beyond that, we've got a lot of games to get into, Mac. So let's get to a message from Ingles. I do have to tell you, Mac, I know you're going to be proud of me. This
I
week,
saw you chefing it up.
yes, who am I? This week, I made a jambalaya, and I
Come
got
on.
all the goods from Ingles. I got some of those fresh veggies, some sausage, already had rice and all that stuff, but put it all together. Oh, man. And then made some, Mac, did you even see? I made some cornbread to go with it. I am
I saw
trying
that.
to will fall weather into being here. And then, of course, I'm wearing a
proud of
tank
you.
top and shorts because I just went on a walk outside and it's friggin' 85 degrees. So I'm doing my part. I'm doing what I can, Mac.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I will like to let you know before we get into Ingles. Number one, I'm very proud of you for doing
Thank
that.
you.
It was very inspiring. Looked fantastic. Number two, is your Christmas tree up yet?
No. And
Okay, you're a little
is
behind. You're a little
yours?
behind. Just you saw it. I sent you a video. It's up. You know what time it is. That Christmas
Wow.
tree is popping and ready. So we
Mac,
we just set it up. Lights
I'm
are
so
on.
proud.
We got a new tree this year. It has a cool setting where it like sparkles, so like different lights kind of go at
Ooh.
different times. It's really cool. I love it. It's beautiful.
I'm really, really, really proud. And I'm just not sure I'm going to
Thank
be able to convince my husband, but I'm going to work on that. And while I work on
Yeah.
that,
Well,
let's
he's
get
at
to a
work all day,
message.
so he comes home, the tree's up.
Yeah.
You know, make it happen.
Maybe Jacob wants it up. I don't know. All right. Ingles,
That's
then
right.
these games.
Did you know Ingles only sells USDA Choice and Prime cuts of meat? Maybe it's time to reward yourself. Our butchers cut all our meat fresh in the store every day. Grass-fed, organic, you name it. Not only that, we'll even cut it to order just the way you like it. And we grind meat fresh in the store multiple times a day. It's all in the bag. That's the best meat in town for the best folks in town. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Okay, Mac, let's get into our big three breakdown. We're going to start with number 4, Miami at Georgia Tech, noon on ESPN. Miami's an 11-point favorite. The biggest question with this game is Haynes King's status. I watched Brent Key when he addressed the media about this, and Mac, he literally did this emoji. He even said, I'm doing the shrug emoji. So I felt like he was playing it a little coy, right? But he said he's been
Of
out of
course.
practice. He's day to day. I think he's going to play. I think that
Yeah.
you are going to have to restrain Haynes King from playing. Like, you'd have to physically
Yeah.
keep him off the field. That guy's going to play.
Right.
I feel good about it. I
Yeah.
don't have any information, but I feel like he's going to play.
I think it's one of those things where you don't have to tell, so why not tell? And honestly, I would even be a little more, unless you just like the gamesmanship, I'd just probably be like, we don't know, we'll see.
Yeah.
You know, like every
I would
week
be-
about anybody, because
Well,
you don't have to
especially your
tell. You don't
quarterback.
have to say anything.
Especially a
Right.
guy like Haynes King, when you're playing Miami, I would be like,
Yeah.
it's not looking good, guys. Like, and this sounds
Just
so
literally-
bad because we don't
Right,
condone
right,
lying, but I mean,
right.
it's not looking good.
All three
He's
guys have
on
practiced
he's
really
on
well this
crutches.
week. All three
Yeah.
guys have been at practice. He's on crutches.
Like,
This guy's been wheeling out, limping out to practice every day, but he's been there.
and then he
Haynes
just
King
shows
comes
up
in
and
and
ready to
lights
go.
up for 400 yards.
We don't
It's
condone
a
this,
miracle.
but
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like some coaches might start doing this, but I do think he's going to play Mac.
Yeah.
Miami is 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 meetings against Georgia Tech. It's very interesting. They, of course, lost last year in an absolutely crazy scenario. 5 of the last 6 games in this series have been decided by 7 points or less. So when you look at that number and you see 11, that is interesting. Georgia Tech is 5-1 against nationally ranked ACC teams under Brent Key. They beat number 17 Miami last year, but Georgia Tech as a program hasn't beaten a top 5 team in like forever. So there's all that. What are your initial thoughts on this game, Mac?
Yeah, I think really, I mean, it's hard to give any like real life analysis on Georgia Tech without knowing who's the QB. We've seen 3 go. We've seen 3 very different styles of play. And you're just like, okay, well, here's what it'll look like with this guy. Here's what it'll look like here. And, it's one of those things where, I hope Haynes can go because he's such a great player. I mean, he is truly an eraser. He makes you better. He hides things. He's elusive. He can run the ball extremely well. Continue to want to see him when available to push the ball downfield to those great speedy wide receivers. And this, quite frankly, if we're being real, is a great game to have your best option because you're probably going to be able to score. You're probably going to be able to move the football, run it, pass it, whatever you want, against this defense for Miami that has been reaching and struggling, in the last couple of weeks to stop people. Now they've had flashes, like the second half against Duke was obviously much better than the first, but still giving up a ton of points. And so, to me, KG, it's one of those things where you just don't know, with Georgia Tech. They've obviously had some time going into this. We haven't seen Haynes in a long time. So how is he going to be? Is there rust at all? Or if he does go, is he full steam ahead? On the other side with Miami, listen, we just spoke to Restrepo. We spoke to Cam the week before. Like, these dudes are hungry. And, they're not letting that complacency creep in. They understand what's at stake. And Cam Ward is the best player in the country. He's the best, quarterback in the country. And I think he's going to continue to have a big day where he's pushing the ball downfield, getting it to all his receivers. I've been very impressed with the tight end play, not just Arroyo, who is I think, the war daddy, but other guys stepping up. I mean, there's like 4 tight ends that they use in a lot of different ways. We saw a true freshman last week run it in for a touchdown, catch a kick return and run it. I'm sure he is going to be more and more implemented into this offense because Mario Cristobal has called him, one of the most impressive freshmen he's ever seen, which is saying a lot. So I'm excited about that team, excited about this offensive line. It feels like finally health is starting to come together. We've slid Jalen Rivers to the inside, which I love. I think he's going to be a great NFL guard. And it just seems like you have your best 5 out there. And then, of course, the running attack from Mark Fletcher and Damian Martinez is electric. I mean, those two, having that 1-2 punch is really, really fun. So the Canes offensively can go nuclear at any time. It's just, will we see that defense step up some? What does it mean? What does it look like? In regards to this number, it's tricky, really tricky. I think the Canes cover. It's kind of small. I think the Canes cover. I'll leave it at that. Even if Haynes King plays, I think the Canes cover. Because, 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's Miami can score 2 touchdowns in 50 seconds. Like, it's crazy how quick they can move the ball. So I'm going to go with the Canes here. And I think they're playing at a high level, especially offensively.
Yeah, I feel like that number is a little too low. And this is a noon game benefits road team. Haynes King, we'll see. I think he's going to play. But again, even if he does play, how healthy is he? That's the question. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, Mac, would you say this is the worst defense Miami's played in a minute? When you compare it to Duke's, probably. Florida State's, Louisville's, even though they scored 52 on Louisville, Cal with all the turnovers they're forcing. The Georgia Tech defense worries me. I think this game, because of the Georgia Tech defense, could get a little out of hand. But then on the flip side, Miami's allowing 32.4 points per game in ACC play. Only Wake Forest, NC State, and Stanford are worse. Mac,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think your defense could lose you this game. I don't think it could lose you the Wake Forest game. I don't think it could lose you the Syracuse game. But is the defense good enough to win a natty? I think that's a fair
Right.
question right now.
Well, how about this? I think the offense is like score 60,
True.
we'll score 61.
Yeah.
That's how I'm kind of looking at, these guys right now and just the things that, they're kind of doing. But I mean, you're right. When you see the fact that what, Georgia Tech's been doing, points wise, it's been good. It's been fine. They're only giving up like 20 something points per game. Georgia Tech is, but it's just the yards, and
Yeah.
it's teams being able to,
And against
kind
a
of
team like
capitalize and
Miami,
saying, yeah, yeah.
it's going to be different.
So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do and just, how do they capitalize? Because it's just a different beast coming in here, right? Like when Miami steps on the field, it's just they're monsters, and it's something you got to deal with.
I'm going to take Miami to cover as well. I think Miami covers here. We agree on that one, Mac.
Good.
Oh, by the way, let's
Good.
get Underdog Fantasy in here. Use our code GMPOD.
Ooh.
The easiest place to play fantasy sports. I wanted to look at the Miami, Georgia Tech, and some of the plays that are on here. They have Cam Ward. There's no Haynes King. He's not even an option right now. So this is
Wow.
recording this on Thursday. Take that as you will. He might pop up on a
Right.
Saturday, so you can stay tuned for that. And our guy Restrepo, his numbers at 8 and 9.5 receiving yards. And of course, you can always take him higher on a touchdown at 0.5.
Yeah,
If
that's
Underdog
right.
was brave enough, they'd put that at 1.5. But I think a lot of people would probably take lower. And then you've got a lot of different Georgia Tech players on here. Cam Ward, his passing numbers at 319.5 and passing
Mhm.
TDs at 2.5. It's basically at that for every game. Longest completion,
Right.
46.5. I would lean higher the 319.5 passing yards for Cam Ward against this Georgia Tech defense.
Yeah, I'm with that too. I'm going back to trusty Rusty. Restrepo scoring a touchdown.
Yep.
Like just go higher there. It's not giving you a ton of odds, but if you have like if you feel good about a couple of runs there, just throw it in there. It's added value there.
Yeah.
Again, I think the running attack, the things that they're going to be able to do is going to be impressive there. Again, you got to choose though. And you're betting against one another. Like if you think Fletcher's going to have the yardage, then you're kind of saying maybe Martinez won't.
Mac, this is weird. I do not see a Miami running back on here. I just see Arroyo,
Ooh.
Restrepo, and Jacoby George. So maybe Underdog.
I think it's because it's early.
It'll pop up. Underdog probably gets stressed out because you don't know which Miami running back is going to hurt you. You just don't know.
Exactly. They're sitting here looking like, oh my goodness.
They're like, I don't know which one
what are we
to
going to
put.
do here?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is one of the things. And then, what's going to be interesting is, do you like Cam Ward higher, than the number there, which I think, what is it, 319?
319.
Is that where it is?
I do.
Yeah. So do you like that? So, Georgia Tech has the 5th best passing defense in the ACC. They're only giving up 230 a game, So it's one of those things. I told you against Florida State, that was an issue. It was an issue. They're number one. They're still number one. You think higher? We'll see.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting. I think, Georgia Tech certainly hasn't seen a quarterback like this. So we'll see what happens there. But that might be the play too.
Okay. We spent a good amount of time there on Miami. Let's get to the rest of these big 3 games. Sad Clemson. Number 23, Clemson is at Virginia Tech, 3:30 p.m. on ESPN. Clemson is a 6.5 point favorite. These two have not played since 2020. That's just sad. These two need to be playing more. Hopefully we can make that happen in the future. I don't have the future schedules in front of me, but come on. Clemson is 8-2 all time at Lane Stadium, Mac. Tied for the best record of any opponent in the venue's history.
Wow.
That is very interesting because it's a very tough place to play. And here's a little sad note for you, Mac. Clemson has played 2 opponents in the top 60 of ESPN's FPI this season. Lost to both by a combined score of 67-24. Virginia Tech is number 30 in the FPI. Sorry. I mean,
awesome.
That says what we all know. Clemson has beaten the bad teams they've played, and they've lost to the 2 good teams they've played. That's just how it is. This is going to be interesting for so many reasons, but this is a Dabo coach him up situation, right? Like, what adjustments do we see from week to week? Can the offense get back on track? Do you move some guys around defensively? Do you put some guys back at maybe their true positions? I don't know. Because it's not like this Virginia Tech offense is that scary, especially with Drones and Tootin questionable. But I said this on our pod. I thought Colin Schlee, the backup, looked very capable against Syracuse. So
Right.
even if it is a backup, I still feel like this is a very capable Virginia Tech offense. Obviously, you want to have Drones and Tootin out there to feel like you can have a better chance of winning the game, especially Tootin.
Right.
So I don't know what to make of that. But this defense, Mac, it just hasn't looked very good, the Clemson defense.
Yeah, no, it hasn't. And it, it is interesting because, it's one of those things you see it with your eyes and you're like, don't love it. You see the stats and some of the numbers, you're like, a little better than I thought. And then you dive into even some more of that where, again, when they play the better teams and, what the stats look like then and how much are the stats manipulated based on who they played, it's a weird thing. And I think that what it honestly comes down to, we can dive into wherever you want to go here with this game, but I think the overarching point is really the lines of scrimmage. We just saw Clemson they did have their worst game on the offensive line by far. I mean, guys getting pushed backwards, guys missing assignments, not getting to the right level, not targeting the right guy. And there were a bunch of situations where Clemson was in short situation, whether that's 2nd and 2, 3rd and 2, goal and 2, whatever it was, and they could not convert, and it was bad, and it was not good. You've got offensive tackles getting pushed into your quarterback, Ashton Gelati sacking the tackle and the quarterback at the same time. I mean, it was really bad. It was really, really bad. And so, that's something where, you're kind of raising your eyebrows at, okay, is APR and company about to go off? Aeneas Peebles, and just schematically the things that, Virginia Tech is going to do, knowing, hey, Clemson's going to run the football. I think they're the number 1 rushing offense in the ACC. And so they're going to do that. So how do we try to limit that? How do we try to stop it? Virginia Tech is up there as well. Now, they're clearly a much different team running the football if they do not have Drones, if they do not have Bashal Tootin. But Clemson's given up a ton. So I said I was going to be short on this, but I'm sorry, I got a little long-winded.
We don't need to.
Clemson is 9th right now in conference in regards to stopping the run. That's not good. Like, if I'm Virginia Tech and those guys are healthy or remotely healthy, I mean, I'm running it 45 times. I'm literally loading it up, putting big bodies in and saying, can you stay disciplined enough to stay in your gaps? Are you healthy enough? It sounds like Clemson has a lot of people down on that already shallow defensive line, defensive end area. So I'm testing them. I'm running right at them. And we've got a bunch of 6-7-year guys on our offensive line. Let's see. Let's see what happens. So to me, again, my overarching thing, I'm sorry, I got detailed there. Lines of scrimmage, who can control them on both sides? That will really have a big factor and implication in this game.
Completely agree. And Mac, honestly, Virginia Tech ran the ball well against Syracuse without Bashal Tootin and Kyron Drones. Coney had 96 yards, Malachi Thomas 73 yards.
Who hasn't?
Schlee,
who hasn't run the ball?
Yeah, well, I know it's Syracuse. Schlee had 54 yards. He's mobile. He's mobile at the quarterback position. So we'll see what happens with who they play. But obviously, if Tootin plays, I give Virginia Tech a much better chance to win, and Kyron Drones. I think this needs to be, and this is all Louisville was as well, but it needs to be a big Phil Maffa game. Phil Maffa may be the one piece on this entire team for Clemson that you really can't say anything about. I mean, dude has brought it every single game. He's so consistent. If I'm missing it, tell me, but I don't think he has a fumble. Like, he's just been solid. And it's so weird when you look at this offense, Mac, how much it struggled against Louisville. It just seems so out of character from what we've seen before. They've got to get back to, you talked about it, moving the ball more in the middle, up the field, the side-to-side stuff. It felt like a massive step back. Wesco was back, and you barely saw him. Like, you've got to take some shots. You absolutely have to, especially on the road. You can't just try to dink and dunk your way to a win in Lane Stadium. I don't think that's going to work.
Yeah, I don't either. And, good thing for them, it's not a night game. And it will be in the second half, I guess it'll be. But, just the environment, what it means, how different it is. It
still should be rowdy.
Yeah, no question. No question about that. So I'm with you, though, on the dinking and dumping. And just the game plan itself, like, it was so weird because it felt like so much side to side stuff, so much 3 and outs. And yet I look at this and Clemson ran 101 plays.
I
I mean, that's
know. That's
nuts.
what was
It's so
wild.
crazy. It's so wild, and still yet had almost 500 yards. I know a lot of that came in the fourth quarter. I might try to scroll actually and find it. I'm going to talk in circles until I find this because I had the breakdown of the yardage. Here it is right here. So in the first quarter, they had about 70 yards. In the fourth quarter, they had over 200 yards. So,
Wow.
like, so much of that came
So after I
in the
left,
fourth quarter. Right, exactly. Had two TDs in the fourth quarter. It was desperation time, and they were doing whatever. So
yeah,
it was very weird. And I'll even look in the middle eight because that was probably more telling. They had 100 yards in the second quarter. They had 50 yards in the third quarter.
the third quarter was
So
abysmal.
that's when the game mattered. That's when the game
Mhm.
shifted. It felt like in the third quarter where it was just Louisville pulling away and really dominating. So it was strange. And how do you get past that? How do you push the ball back vertically? Virginia Tech has good defensive backs. Eddie Royal thinks two of the best in the country. We just saw Louisville have 10 pass breakups in their
Yeah.
game. So guys have to get open. You have to scheme them open, but also you as a personal player have to get open and then catch the football. Like I didn't think Cade had a bad game. I just felt like the windows were extremely tight and
Mhm.
they were playing well. Louisville played well. So, obviously Clemson wants to get over this and get back into the winning column. You do not control your own destiny. It does not look good at all that you have any type of road to Charlotte, even with one conference loss. We've said this all year long. You have one loss in conference, you might be done. You might not have a path just looking at how the schedules lay out. So they would need, I believe, KG. I know there's a tiebreaker and all this stuff, but I think you need Miami or SMU to lose twice. And that's not
Yeah.
happening with who those guys have the way ahead. Now, you could argue a playoff run. If you run the table, you have 2 losses on the season. There have been a handful of teams. I don't know the stat directly. We'll talk about this on the huddle. But there have been a lot of 3-loss teams in the top 12 over like the last 10 years. So that means you're in, and you only have 2. And so, can you fight, crawl, and scratch for some type of bid? Who knows? But you're going to need help. You don't control anything. You don't
You
control
better
anything.
look very impressive in those wins as well. If you
You
and
have to.
and
You
hope
gotta blow
South
people
Carolina
out. You gotta blow
continues
people out.
to win and jump up into the top
Correct.
25. Mac, the
Right.
one thing, well, not the one thing, the many things that hurt you if you're Clemson, the tiebreaker if you're all one loss is common opponents. And
Correct.
all 3 of those teams, SMU, Miami, and Clemson, have played Louisville. And you lost to Louisville, and SMU and Miami
Right.
beat them. So that's kind of brutal. It's almost like Louisville was the game you couldn't lose, weirdly. But when it comes to this
Right.
game too, Mac, I'm going to be looking at special teams because your special teams for Clemson has been terrible. They rank 130th in the country in special teams efficiency. We know what Virginia Tech, I know it's not necessarily beam or ball, but we know what they're known for. I feel like you're going to have to make a field goal or something in this game. Like there may be a time where you need to make a field goal. Can you even get the kickoff? Like, I don't know. And I don't mean kick off.
Yeah.
Like, can you get the kick off? Can you get it up in the air?
Yeah.
See if it'll go through the yellow things.
Yeah.
Like, that's mind blowing to me. When it comes to the spread, Mac, this is really tough. This number is tough because of, to me, how bad Clemson looked. Virginia Tech, of course, coming off a loss. But I want to add this. Virginia Tech, if they went out, they've got Clemson, by Duke, Virginia. If they went out, they finish 8-4. Massive step in the right direction for the Hokies. So this is a big game for them in a lot of ways. Big difference between 7-5 and 8-4.
Yeah.
Call me a homer. I'm going to put my faith in Dabo and take Clemson to cover the 6.5. It just seems like it seems like a small number.
Yeah. Well, I think it's drastically different too. A lot like the Miami situation. Do the best players play?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just,
I feel like
it's
they do,
interesting.
but I don't know.
And both seems like I would love if we had like a real injury report. I feel like this one would just be loaded up, and you're just like, dang, this is
everybody.
nuts for really both teams. Obviously, I'm with you as well. I mean, I'm taking the Tigers. I think you hope that was a blip on the radar, and you hope that offense gets going. Defense, relative lost cause at this point. I mean, those guys so talented, can't get in the right direction. I mean, probably, honestly, there's a couple of biggest disappointments of the year. Obviously, Florida State takes that by far.
Absolutely.
NC State, close second, but they've been playing better. And then the Clemson defense might actually be too. I mean, I thought that unit, when you looked at it preseason, had the ability to be the number 1 team in the country in regards to defense, and they have been relatively the farthest thing from that. So it's unfortunate, and that's just where you are. So it's a situation where you got to take off or get left behind.
Well said, Mac. Okay, let's get to our other ranked team that's in action. Number 18, Pitt will be hosting Virginia. Pitt's a 7.5-point favorite, 8 p.m. on ACC Network. Mac and the crew will be there. You mentioned playoff. Pitt still very much has a chance. They have to win out. If their only loss is to a top, whatever SMU ends up being on the road, that's a very, depending on what else happens, you still have a very good chance. So you got to keep winning. Pitt is 6-2 against the spread this season. Love that. Virginia is coming off an absolute beatdown by the hands of North Carolina. They gave up 10 sacks. Pitt is averaging 3 sacks a game, which ranks 11th nationally. That does not seem good, Mac. And it just feels like Virginia, I feel like that UNC game was brutal in so many ways. Like, who's their quarterback? What's going on with the O-line? The playmakers seem to have disappeared. I don't really see a way in which Virginia comes into Pittsburgh. Hopefully a very motivated Pittsburgh team. Narduzzi will have these guys realizing how much is still at stake for them, right? I just don't see how Virginia's in this game. And I am a homer with the Who's, but I'm taking Pitt to cover.
Yeah. Let me start big picture right here and give you my hot take. If Pittsburgh runs the table, I'm guaranteeing they're in the playoff.
Oh, okay.
It. They will not have played an ACC championship. They get a bye there.
Right.
If they run it, it's a virtual lock. You still have Clemson. You still have Louisville. 2 very hard games. You have Clemson at home, Louisville on the road. Finish the season at Boston College. They'll be in. They will be in. So I hope they realize the magnitude of still where they are. Like, you got off easy. You got absolutely blown out in Dallas. The door's blown off. The score is not indicative of the game because you were wrecked. And yet still you can make this college football playoff. And so I hope they get that. I hope they tune it up, figure it out. And this weekend's a great start against the team, as you said, in Virginia that's going to be limping into this game, that probably isn't uber confident going into this game. Can you lick your wounds and move on quick and say, let's go back to work? Sharks back in the water. Let's go. We didn't see you last week. The shark, it was landlocked. You couldn't get to Dallas.
Yeah.
Well, we're back in the rivers. Sharks in the rivers. Let's go hunt. Let's go play. So that's what I'm interested in seeing. I thought SMU did a pretty good job of bottling up Desmond Reed, who we know is so electric.
Very good job.
It's a tall task. It's a tall task, to do that each and every week. Can Virginia replicate? I don't think they'll be able to. And Pittsburgh might win this pretty convincingly. Now, the last piece of this puzzle, KG, that has been disappearing recently, and I was a little hesitant to say this, but I think it's a bit of a trend now. Eli Holsting has to get back to what he was doing. And I talked with EJ about this, and he said teams are playing more zone. And when you play zone and can get pressure, you have to be patient and yet avoid chaos. And that's hard to do, especially as a young guy. So when it's man-to-man and my great receivers can win, we've heard Cam Ward talk about this all the time, it's easy. EJ said it's easy. When teams play man and we can beat you just in regards to concepts and timing, football is easy. But when you have to wait for windows to open, you have to anticipate throwing into windows, that's when it gets very difficult. And so, need to see Eli start trending back, growing up, maturing. I get he's super young. We might see him for 3 more years at Pittsburgh. But he has to get back to that and being the electric player, winning rookie of the week every week type of guy that we've seen for this entire season.
Great point, Mac. I'm completely with you. I just don't know if the Virginia defense can cause him that many issues. So we'll see. Maybe it's a get-right game for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Mac, let's get to our speed round here because we spent a lot of time on Miami and Clemson. We had a lot to say in those games. All right, Syracuse, 6-2 Syracuse at Boston College, and they're an underdog. I found this very interesting, Vegas. BC a 2-point favorite, noon on the CW. BC coming off a bye week, coming off that heartbreaking loss to Louisville where they were up 20-0 and then it just absolutely fell apart. However, this is a very interesting stat. BC has failed to cover the spread in 10 of its last 12 games as a favorite. They don't seem very comfortable as a favorite. And then the BC offense has it's not been the same. Castellanos has yet to have a 300-yard passing game this year. He's only had one 250-yard passing game. He doesn't look as comfortable back there. Syracuse,
Right.
massive win over Virginia Tech. I am taking Syracuse +2. And I know Vegas knows everything, Mac, but this seems so weird to me that BC is a favorite.
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
Well, if you're going to take them +2, you might as well just take money line. Get better
Well,
odds,
yeah,
get better
obviously.
money.
But just from the spread,
Because I'm
Syracuse
with
+2.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think they win. And what's fascinating enough to go back to Underdog Fantasy real quick. Again, use our code GMPOD. This is Kyle McCord's lowest total that he's had by far. It's like 280. 280.
Take it.
Hammer it. Hammer it. I don't know if there's
agreed.
again because of the terrible game and maybe last game they didn't quite use him as much. He only threw it like 30 times as opposed to his 65 that he normally does. They are always believing in him. I think you absolutely take that. It's a noon game. It's probably going to be a little cold, but he's from Ohio State. He grew up in Jersey. He's fine. He's going to thrive in that environment. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. I'm taking Syracuse as well. I think we see a bit of a bounce back from Kyle McCord and want to finish this season properly.
Let's get to 7-2 Syracuse and get in the playoff rankings next week, possibly. I think it's possible at 7-2.
Syracuse, show me. Continue to show us. You did it last week. I thought you lost 10 out of 10 in the past whatever years, and you won. And you won that game. So
that was huge.
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I like that orange. Come on, baby.
I've been with you, Syracuse. Okay, Mac, tonight, Cal at Wake Forest, 8 p.m., ACC Network. Cal is a 7-point favorite. First ever matchup between these two nerd schools, both coming off a bye week, both coming off big wins. I want to add this, Mac, two very interesting notes. Cal is 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games. They've been very good at covering the spread. We know their 4 losses have come by a combined 9 points. We've talked about that quite a few times. This is a great stat from intern Nick. Think of the number here is 120. All right. Think of the number 120 rushing yards. Have that number in your head.
Okay.
Cal is 1-9 when allowing 120 or more rushing yards since last year. Wake Forest is 1-11 when allowing 120 or more rushing yards since last year. Intern Nick with the nugget. So basically, which team can stop the run? Cal is going to have Jaden Ott continuing to get rest and get healthy. He didn't do much against Oregon State, but they didn't need him. I'm taking Cal, and I think Cal covers, even on this crazy trip all the way to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, USA.
Wow.
Give me Cal. I believe in Cal. I like Cal.
I think you're forgetting that Cal hates playing in the ACC and has not won a game.
I know.
That trend continues.
I think Cal's a good team. That's the difference.
Sure. Quality team in the ACC, baby. Ooh.
They are.
No.
They're a good
Wake
team.
Forest is winning this game. Actually, let me pull this up real quick. I
love
sitting right here. I got this sitting right here. Look at this. You see this little running guy right here? That's a Demon Deacon on the run. You know who that is? Damon Claiborne running for 150. That guy is going to do his thing. I think he's the best back in the game, and I think he makes it happen. I think they win this game. Maybe it's a field goal. Close your eyes, California. And Wake Forest makes it happen. I think they do it. I think they pull away and win this game.
Okay, 2 more nuggets from Nick really fast because this game has so many nuggets. So Wake Forest has failed to cover in their last 7 home games. Something to keep in mind, even though Cal is favored by 7.
Brutal.
Here's the stat, Mac, because you've said this about Wake so many times. And we love Dave Clawson. We love him. This man won the Atlantic with Dabo Swinney in the Atlantic. Like, people will remember that. Decades from now, people will look back and say, Dave Clawson won the Atlantic when Dabo was there. Like, amazing. The Deeks are 11-26 in November under Dave Clawson. 11-26. I'm going to take Cal. Okay. On to our next game, Eric McLean.
What was the number you told me to remember? Hold on. What was the number you told me to remember?
120 rushing yards. That's the number.
1,
whichever team
2,
can hold
12.
the other
They're
team
going to 12 wins.
under that.
12 wins. That's what we're doing.
We'll see. Okay. Duke at NC State. Very important game for both teams when it comes to bowl eligibility. NC State a 3-point favorite, 3:30 p.m. on ACC Network. NC State is looking better. Coming off a good game against Stanford. I know Stanford is Stanford, but they had their backs go off. CJ Bailey, he leads all true freshmen in the country with 11 passing touchdowns. He's looked very good. as a true freshman. On the other side, Duke's been forcing turnovers. They've been very good in one-score games. I lean NC State, though. I think Duke, with the kind of buildup of the tough SMU loss and then going to Miami and losing, NC State's feeling better, probably feeling a bit more confident. I'm going to take the Pack.
I think the Pack have found their quarterback. I think it's gotten the fans back, which they never faded away. You know, we went to that night game and I was really interested. It was fall break. And I was like, is everybody jumping ship? No, that place was packed and loud. And a big reason of why they were, able to compete in that game. They didn't win, but they were able to compete in that game. I think the Wolfpack Nation is back and excited about these young guys, very excited about CJ Bailey. And I think they want to show out for that reason. And of course, it's a rivalry. I get that, and cross town, and battle for some recruiting guys and things of that nature. So I'm with you. I think CJ Bailey gets it done. A little bit more of a challenge. This Duke defense is good, but I think they get it done and they find a way to win. The under might be in play. We'll see.
I like that.
But I'm rolling with CJ.
I think that'll be one of the more interesting games of the weekend. I think it'll be a good watch.
Yeah.
Okay, Mac.
For sure.
Our last game. We don't even have to spend any time on this. Florida State at number 10, Notre Dame. Notre Dame, a team that lost to Northern Illinois this season. Notre Dame is a 26.5-point favorite, 7:30 on NBC. I am not betting on Florida State. I think the locker room is lost. And Notre Dame is 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 games. Something to keep in mind. I imagine the one game they didn't cover was Northern Illinois. Mac.
You know what? This game started at 24.5. It is up to 26.5. Not good. Not good. Nobody's believing. Nobody's believing. We're going to have a really big offseason conversation about Florida State. And Ira, if you have lasted 42 minutes of this episode, can't wait to talk to you.
Ira, we need to talk to you, man.
We need to talk to Ira because this is crazy. And I really, like, the future is so blurry and so unclear because stuff has to happen. People are going to be fired. I don't think it's Norvell, but there's going to be a bunch of changes that have to happen.
Absolutely.
Which stinks. But that's part of it. And we'll have a lot to say. In regards to this game, the Noles get blasted, and it's going to suck. And I hate that because I hate Notre Dame, and I hate that we give them all these games. But anyway, this game could have been cool, could have been massive, but it's not. So anyway, here we are. Long episode, really fun. Like I said, impactful weekend, KG. Yeah. We'll see what happens. But we appreciate you guys tuning in always. Thanks for sticking around with us. We have so much fun on this, and you guys help us with that. Jump in the comments. Tell us your picks. Tell us where you are. Underdog Fantasy, our code, GMPOD. Get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Let us know your picks, too. Let us know if you're winning or if you're following my advice and you're losing. I would suggest listening to intern Nick. He's been on a heater right now, and he loves kickers, which somehow always works out. But anyway, need you guys to go subscribe, jump on the channel with us. We always are grateful for that. And, of course, over on SiriusXM and Apple Podcasts, the OGs, we appreciate you guys. But until next time, we'll see y'all.